So, in terms of kind of moving forward, if you've got any kind of questions, just before we kind of move on to the next one, which is the one I'm kind of most excited about presenting today, because I think it's a real opportunity in property going forward.
Fantastic. Yeah, so I've had a few people coming back on now. So Scott Weir saying hi. Toyo has said Paul is a legend. I mean, yeah, so just going back to this, so we've talked about, you know, you have your buy to lets, you've got your HMOs, you know, small developments. I mean, these are quite a huge jump to to this. So for me, when you talk about following politics and not following the pricing, do you feel that that's just, you know, years of experience that you've done, or?
No, I think it's doing things a different way, Emma. Right? You know, you talk about these projects, and I want to make this point yet again. You know, it's like fantastic, great for you, Paul. Right? You know, I'm sure there'll be people who listen to this and go, "Great for you, Paul." Anyway, I'm going to buy a, you know, 2-bed buy to let. Right? But actually, particularly in certain parts of the country, that 2-bed buy to let is not a huge amount of difference of money than the amounts of money that we've bought some of these projects for. And you'll see that when we move on to the next one. It's, are you willing to think outside of that box? Or do you listen to presentations like this and think, great for him, however, I'll go back and I'll buy my 2-bedroom buy to let because that's what I understand. I think we'll have to be willing to understand something new, which brings me into my next presentation, the BESS, or battery energy storage. Now, I've got to say to you, Emma, a year ago, I knew very little, or about the same as you or anybody else in the audience, about battery energy storage and its relationship to property and the whole renewables relationship to property. However, an opportunity came up with one of our sites, and we had the opportunity to do battery energy storage on it. Now, I had two choices at that point in time. I could have handed it over to a developer who already did battery energy storage and made a reasonable amount of money, or I could put my learning cap on. I could be prepared to stand outside of my box, right? Because we all have this, you know, box of limitation, if you like, right? I had to stand outside of my box. You know, I'm a 61-year-old man, and this whole renewable energy wasn't even around 30 years ago when I got involved in property, or 45 years ago when I started in business. But I was willing to step outside of my comfort zone and go and learn about it. And boy, have I been on a learning curve. And let me show you what that learning curve actually means in terms of pounds, shillings, and pence. So we've got 50 megawatts connection. Now, just to give people an idea of what that is, a really big battery energy storage facility would be 150 megawatts. A small one would be maybe 5 or 10. So 50 is a reasonably good size to start with. If I tell you what 50 megawatts would run in terms of houses, it would run a small village or a small town. So it's a good size facility. This is a layout. We own a much bigger site that this will be part of. And this is the layout of the battery energy storage. This is the type of thing, this is an artist's impression for the planners of what battery energy storage may look like. It's essentially storage containers, and inside of each storage container is battery cells, and depending on how much wattage you have or megawatts you have, depends on how many of these containers you have. The numbers on this one, again, let's leave the kind of big numbers and what it's worth today, but let's start with the cost. So we bought this site at £71,000 per acre. I don't think if you're getting involved in property that £71,000 per acre sounds an unachievable amount of money for most people. And we're only going to use up to about 2 acres on this. So, you know, £140,000. I would think if you're serious about doing property, that's an amount of money that you could get your hands on. The project, because you sell these differently than you sell some other projects, if you like. The project, which means the consent from the DSO, the local DSO, the consent from National Grid, and the planning consent. With those things in place, somebody will buy the right to put the battery storage on our land and pay us somewhere between 3.5 million and 4.5 million. Depends on the price of energy, on the kind of day, month, or year that you're kind of doing the deal. You sell these per megawatt. So at the lowest per megawatt's been about £57,000. The highest has been 157. We're currently sitting around about 95 per megawatt. May drop down to 85. So somewhere between 3.5 and 4.5 million. GDV on this is 55 million. We are very unlikely to build this out. We are much more likely to partner with a specialist in this industry and do some kind of deal. And then we'll lease them the land on a 45-year lease, somewhere between £75,000 per annum and £100,000. I say somewhere between 75 and 100 because when you do these deals, you can either take more money up front, so we could maybe charge 5 million, but only charge them 75,000 per annum, or you could charge them 4 million and end up with, you know, another 100,000 or another £25,000 per annum over at least a 45-year period. So let's just look at those projects and look at what the land values and project values are at the moment for what I would say is a relatively small amount of money, or probably the value of a reasonable sized house. So if you look at what we've spent 205,000, we've spent 335,000, we've spent 140,000. And the sale values of those projects as we sit here today is around about 12.5 million. Now, I'm not saying that again to impress you. Oh, look, Paul's done 12.5 million. Isn't he clever? Right? You're clever too. But are you clever enough to stand outside of this box that you're currently in, where you only think about buy-to-let, HMO, serviced accommodation, or some of the other things that are being bandied about? Or are you prepared to think differently? Incidentally, the gross GDV, which won't be our gross GDV because we won't be spending the vast majority of this money, others will, is 96.6 million.